Welcome to another Kingscrusher radio show. So I've got a couple of great games to go over with you, and let's see. I'll just improve that thing over there for a moment. Maybe. Okay. So the first game I'd like to go over with you. These are two games from the 1930s. The first one is Max Euwe against Alexander Alekhine. So this was played in the World Championship match of 1935. So Max Euwe was playing white. This has been nicknamed, this is the Pearl of Zandvoort. Okay, so when a game is called a pearl, it's generally quite good. Okay, I'm just going to stick on Lightbook and add a Qb8 as well. So, 1935, D4 for Max Euwe, E6, so inviting a French defence. This move is very interesting, so it's inviting a French defence, but white's not interested in that. C4, and we have a Dutch defence instead. G3, bishop B4 check, a disruptive check, putting the bishop here, disrupting white's connection to the d4 pawn. The bishop drops back, bishop g2, knight f6, knight c3, and now Alekhine plonks his knight into e4 there, and now starts to support it with b6. It's challenged, it's supported, but now it's challenged again, so with a lot of pressure on the diagonal. Black can play knight takes c3 here. It's probably difficult to do other things instead. This piece has moved twice. It's you might think it's a bit of a waste of time than what black played. If black plays d5, I think white's slightly better here. This is slightly better. For white, white's got that nice e5 hole as well. So that's a bit too committal for the pawn structure. So knight takes c3 keeps black's pawn structure fairly okay, and we have the exchange of bishops, and now queen c8, so the queen wants to occupy that diagonal. Seems useful there, but now d5, and white is actually it looks good, this bishop on c3 now across this diagonal. d6, knight d3, e5. So for the moment, technically, this is about equal, technically, it seems. Black could look forward to the c5 square. For example, if black played something like this, he could look forward to that c5 square on a good day. Maybe also the queen on a good day might come in for some sort of attack. We have king h1, but for the moment, actually, c6 is played here, making use of the queen's position on c8, trying to weaken perhaps white's centre a bit. But now not taking on d5, in fact king h8. Here f4 is played, and it looks as though this bishop is going to be quite handy on the diagonal if e4 is prompted, so there's a lot of pressure on the diagonal. e4. Now knight b4, encouraging black to close the position. Black doesn't want a big knight on d5. You know, c takes, knight takes is a big position for white. Yeah, that's to be avoided. So actually c5 keeps things closed for the moment. The knight drops to c2 and re-centralizes. So white has got quite a comfortable position. And I think this next move is a big mistake, actually, relatively speaking. Bishop f6 was played. Yeah, this is a mistake. It does carry with it a kind of weakness of the last move, in fact, that you might be able to guess. But actually, on this particular occasion, it's not so much an obvious exploitation of the weakness of the last move. Just before we go on from this point, if black, I think black was actually okay here, technically. With a move like Queen E8, I think black was technically okay. There is some pressure on black's position, but actually, you know, this position here, you know, it seems black could be okay. For example, bishop f6 is tactically possible, maybe. But yeah, in the game, yeah, this bishop f6 being played here might be slightly unfortunate. I wonder if you can guess why. If I said white to play, what good move do you reckon is available to white? But try and like check, you know, the sequence, the follow-up is just as important here as guessing the move that was played here. It's quite an interesting follow-up. So white to play here, what would you play? So 100 points for the move and 500 points if you can see the correct follow-up as well. Yeah, the weakness of the last move is clearly, but by design, you know, I don't think it was expected to play this because, you know, there's a discovered attack on the knight. Yeah. So I have to ask you what you would play in this position now, because this was the idea, to win a piece, right? You know, if queen takes, then black's just winning, right? That was the idea. In fact, there's a little trap that was casually set, but white here has a good move in this position. So white's play here for another 100 points. Yeah. Okay, so you might be able to guess this, I hope you can, that, well, it's forced, basically. There's no other move. Any other move, black's just taking on f5, basically. I mean, if we're taking this bishop, that is. So this is forced. It's hitting the queen, so an important, very important tempo gain. And there's still two pieces hanging, right? There's still the piece hanging, I mean. But now, just knight takes e4, letting the bishop go back. Yeah, so we... pardon me. Knight takes e4, letting the bishop go back. The bishop goes back. Knight d2. And what we have here is a great central pawn mobility, massive central pawn mobility on the cards. So really, the key thing is if black can blockade these pawns or not. Also, king safety might be an issue. If black counter sacrifices a piece in some scenario where the white king might be unsafe. But if the pawns are allowed to expand here, this could be really dangerous. And so this next move is really energetic straight away. G5, trying to hit the pawns. That's actually ignored here because white doesn't want to give up the e5 square for nothing. This would just be a disaster tactically, I think, giving up that e5 square and weakening the position. The blockade is set in beautifully on e5 there. Any e4 from white, you know, this e5 square is beautiful. So white wants to avoid any such blockade opportunity like the plague in this position. So plays e4. No blockade on e5. Black took now, which does open up this g file. It's a shared road to both each other's kings, though, this g file. One question here is, of course, coming up now, if e5 should actually be played, given that black, well, black plays this. Should e5 be played, given that black could potentially, you know, sacrifice a piece back? The thing is, white's got 3 pawns for that piece, so white would be a pawn up. So in the light of that, would you play e5 here or not? e5 here, yes or no? Would you say you're a pawn up after, and it doesn't matter if black countersacks a piece to remove your beautiful pawns? So would you play e5 here or not? What do you reckon? Just to keep you on your toes, I'm asking this question really. So central pawn mobility is the factor you want to massively underline in this position, right? But are you willing to potentially give up or translate that advantage if black countersacks a piece and you're only one pawn up, or is it good enough? Is it good enough? Oh, there's some division here. Michael Buffkin has said no on YouTube stream. Dream Kids, yes. So there's some no's and some yeses. I think such a decision here probably needs evidence for some calculation, yeah. We've got 3 pawns for the piece. In fact, e5 is the top engine choice as well. A second move, it's the one played in the game. A second alternative is given as Queen h3 here. This might offer something, giving up the f pawn like this. This is interesting, but the advantage is actually far less technically than this position. Yeah, with f4 under fire as well, that's the major concern actually in this position as well. If we played Queen g3, actually black can take this pawn actually, maybe, and be okay. So it is actually already, there is some pressure already which needs to be addressed as well. So e5 at least does that. It at least resolves this pressure. And black didn't actually take here, even though it's one of the top engine choices. Black didn't actually take here. Let's have a look. F takes. Now if rook takes, we're quick to that f file. And this should be okay for white, this position. Even if we give up that pawn, we get a quick rook to the 7th rank here. And what we have got is a nice d pawn. This should be a nice advantage for white in this position. So yeah, the translation of one knight to another needs careful consideration, but this should be good enough to win actually, this line. So black actually after e5 didn't take. Let's have a look at another line here. Queen takes e5, knight f3, queen e2. This one, again, it's similar sort of. Well, we've still got this big d pawn. This is still okay for white. Yeah, this is still okay for white. It's a reasonable advantage. Yeah. So okay, e5. Okay, Alekhine, he didn't get rid of the pawns. Queen e8 was played. So the pawns survive. e6. And then we have a tactical move, rook g8, which you might wonder, what on earth is rook g8 about? Actually, there's a very beautiful point here. This is a nice little trap, this. If white takes on d7, there's a beautiful point of... I thought originally queen g6 is good because it's threatening mate. And if rook g1, there's queen g1, but this is not the point actually, queen g6 of this trap, because there's a refutation here. You just play queen h3 and that covers all the squares. But no, the point here, if this was taken, is actually, it seems to be queen e2, so just double attacking, threatening the knight and g2. And if white defends, then this position is good for black, believe it or not. It's actually good for black. Yeah, black is a bishop up. These pawns are not going anywhere. So, okay, so that is a trap to avoid, taking this knight. So white played knight f3, avoiding that. And yeah, this bishop would be nice to take maybe at some point. Queen g6, which threatens the mate in one. And yeah, it is getting a little bit tricky actually here. To be honest, it is getting a bit tricky. Just before we check out knight f3, there might have been, I believe there might have been something slightly better here than knight f3. We're talking from a theoretical perspective. It seems like queen d3 would stop queen g6, right? Maybe this would have been a possible improvement actually. This position we take here, because there's still some pawn inertia, and this looks quite promising, this position. But anyway, in the game we have knight f3, so this queen g6, it's kind of forcing white to do something radical, which he does to defend that against queen g2 mate. Black gets some material back, winning an exchange there. Queen f6. Now queen f6, there might have been yeah, it's a difficult position. All right, so let's carry on with queen f6. It's a difficult position. Here now, knight g5 with the threat of knight f7 check. You see the king's cut there, so the queen would have to sacrifice herself. So that something has to be done about this knight f7, and perhaps rook g6 was available. This wasn't played. Possibly this is possible if check king g7 is ingenious and black's actually better. So rook g6 is interesting, you know, to consider, and apparently this position might be about equal actually. I know, it's crazy. But in the game we have rook g7, which might not be as good. E takes was played. And if white has another move, he'll play queen h3 here, which puts a lot of pressure on the king side and protects the pawn. So this was snapped off. And white's in the driving seat again here. Queen e3. White's in the driving seat again after knight e6. Although he's the exchange down, it is for how many pawns? So he's got 6 pawns, 3, 4, 2 pawns for the exchange. Is not bad usually. Not bad at all. Black uses that pinned knight now for this next move to put a bit of pressure on the white position. So threatening maybe queen, not queen f4, but there's a bit of pressure here. White actually simplified. He didn't mind the queens coming off. So again, we're back to a nice set of connected pawns here. But the exchange down. Rook f5, rook e1, h6. Now this might be not providing the greatest resistance, this h6 move. There might have been something better here. Even sacking the exchange back might be possible, because the king can come just in time. But that wasn't played. Maybe that's a path of great resistance potentially. H6 though, the pawns look dangerously mobile. We see this move now, a very nice tactical move, which seals the deal. It seals the deal. It seals the victory in this position. A very nice clinical tactical move. Basically seals the deal, I believe. Yeah, because if we can underline these pawns as connected passed pawns they're usually trumping a rook. When you have like two connected pass pawns on the 6th or the 7th, they're usually much better than a rook. But how do we get active pawn? How do we activate these pawns? There's a wonderful move that is played here, perhaps just before the time control. If the time controls move 40, we're at move 39 here, so critical 39th move. White play here. What would you play in this position? If you've just joined this YouTube stream, it's Max Euwe against Alekhine in one of the World Championship matches, which was held at various locations. This was 3rd of December 1935. White play here. Nice tactical move. You guys have got to see this move. It's wonderful if you see it. Absolutely wonderful. The pawns crash through after this move, basically. Now, some of you are saying d6. I think d6 just loses, doesn't it? Even without moving the pieces, d6, rook takes e6. If your idea is d7, I just play rook f8. No? Let's put that on the board. d6. Don't we just take the rook? d7, rook f8. Your mission to maximize the connected pass pawns has failed there. No. It's not d6. Knight f8? Knight f8. Don't we just play rook takes f8? I don't see what the point of knight f8 is. d6 after. I mean, we just play rook e6 blockading. And if d7 rook d8, knight f8. I mean, we just take this. And if we play d6, I think we just play rook e6 blockading everything. We play d7 just rook d8. End of the pawns. I'm glad you're all getting it wrong. It makes it more fun for me to do this. Ha ha. Yeah. Knight takes c5 or knight f4. Let's rule these out. Knight takes c5. I think we just, let me see before I'm checking the engine. I think we just take on e5 in the event of that, and we've got, you know, take it with this and check and go behind the pawn. We have to be careful actually. No, I think either rook will do. No, we just take that out because we're threatening to check. And if takes, I think we can go behind the pawn. Well, this, I think we just take this because we can bounce a check off to go behind the pawn, right? So not knight takes c5. Knight f4. Knight f4. That's interesting. I think we just take that, and if d6 we blockade the e pawn, and if d7 rook f8. There is a very, very good point of knight f4. If white was wanting to lose, white could play this, and you can play knight g6 check. That is a very good point, and might give you a clue actually. This gives a slight clue about something. This is like the hand of the Terminator that's left in the Terminator. There's a clue here for technology we can use. Yeah, this is a clue for a technology we can use. Yeah, based on the king position, right? But assuming we don't play rook takes e5, take here e6. I think, yeah, we just safely blockade the pawns, and that's the end of that. Yeah. So no, but there is a move here, believe it or not. But you've been given a glimpse of something there which you should use, make use of. There's a glimpse of something there. I'm glad this is really hard to find this move. So this is obviously in many people's blind spots, this move that was played here, if it's not immediately obvious. Did anyone? No, I think no one's guessed it. No one's guessed it. Knight F8. Are we using Kotov's candidate move system just by going through every single candidate move? Knight F8. We seem to be here. Knight F8. I think we're blockading the pawns. We just we just take this. Are you guys having me on? Are you having me on? We just blockade the pawns. What is this? Can we not just play Rook D8? No? Where are the pawns going? I don't know where the pawns are going. How are they going forward here? Oh, there is a move. There is a move which guarantees. There is a move which guarantees the advantage. Okay, no, I can't take any more of this. I'm going to have to show you Knight D8. Ha ha! Knight D8. Amusing, isn't it? Alright, so the point is, right? Rook takes. What we can do is play Rook takes, and we can have this nice fork. Yeah, fork, and we're a piece up. And given that's the case, the other thing about Knight D8, which is more subtle about it, is it's kind of getting the rooks a bit defensive, potentially. It is helping the pawns as well. This knight is helping the pawns. So, you know, for example, if we try to kick the knight, guess what we play here? And this is the magic that I was talking about before. You gain access to that bit of magic about the passed pawns on the 6th or the 7th. Triumphant, are often triumphant against a rook. So in this position, I hope you can see the most crushing move in this position. What would you play in this position if you had the white pieces? This didn't happen during the game, by the way. This is a variation. What white's play here would be winning with... actually, there's a couple moves which win. Either I'll give you 500 points, actually. Either as a crushing advantage. What would you play here? What would you play here? What do you think the point is here? Remember, connected past pawns. I gave that big clue, yeah, earlier. Yeah, connected past pawns will do. E6, yeah. Because now, actually the knight's supporting the pawn if we move that. So we've actually got D6 as a threat. The knight, perversely, is supporting the E6 pawn, making D6 possible. And if we take that guy, we have this kind of avalanche of the pawns, where it's not possible here, in this particular position, to blockade the pawns anymore. Yes, it's not possible to blockade them. Yeah. You know, if we play Rook F7, D7 is killing. You know, if we take here, we just queen, check. So yeah, Knight D8 is a killer, isn't it? It's a shocker. Knight D8 is a shocker, and apparently very hard to find. So in the game, Alekhine tried Rook F2. But now the pawn the E pawn just goes forward. So he's trying to blockade with this Tarrasch rule, rooks behind pawns. But alas, now the E pawn's ready to go now. We're after knight C6, Rook E7, E7. This is a great position because if white has two more moves, no. Maybe that's the wrong way of putting it. I think black's not doing anything here. Black's not doing anything here, but he does try B5. Yeah. Now, if white does take on b5, then it's still very good, in fact, because rook takes, we have knight take. It's still good for white, this position, funny enough. Still good. We've got now a pass pawn over here. We've got two connected pass pawns over there. But he didn't do that. He can do that. He played actually knight d8, which is very good as well. And this is actually threatening immediately the check and knight d6 to lift that blockade. So in the light of knight f7 check, king g7 seems to have been played to stop knight f7. But now knight b7 is played, and the threat immediately is actually, forget about d6, the threat immediately is knight d6. Yeah. We have king f6. Now this is designed against knight d6 and nothing else. Now if knight d6 this wasn't played, then black can play rook takes e7 and breathe a sigh of relief. The danger is over. No, white doesn't want to do that here. It was designed against knight d6. White plays instead in this position. Can you guess? White's play here. I've given you a clue. It's not knight take. It's not knight d6. What would you play in this position? Yeah, although it was designed against knight d6, it wasn't really designed for rook e6, gain of tempo. It does give a critical tempo, rook e6 check. So now if king f7, we just play knight d6 check, take that rook after. So king g5, but now knight d6, and white's piece up. Rook takes. White can just take the rook and be winning. Instead, he threw in a check sadistically so he could choose which rook he wants to take next. And black resigned here. If king f5, you can take either rook and win actually. Either rook will do. Apparently stronger might be to take this one actually. Yeah, in this position, even if there's a pin right, we can well, we can play knight g3 winning the rook. If here, this is just like we played d6 with the idea of d7, and that's over. Yeah, so fun one. So after that knight e4 check, pardon me, knight e4 check, black resigned. So yeah, that was interesting how you want to underline your like trump cards in the position that, you know, the pass pawns, and this understanding. I once had this tragic game where I brushed aside this opportunity for connected pass pawns, and it's a great source of regret. So in your own games, when you have these opportunities for connected pass pawns, you've got to look at those opportunities in great detail, even though it might seem risky. Sometimes it's not. They're really worth more than a rook quite often if you have connected pass pawns on the 6th or the 7th. Alright, let's have a look at another game. Game 2 tonight. Botvinnik Vidmar. Botvinnik against Vidmar. I think this might have been given a brilliancy prize at the time. Actually, I think there might have been some controversy that this might have been set up in some way, but no, maybe I'm confusing this. Let's have a look. So Botvinnik against Vidmar played in Nottingham 1936. Now Nottingham 1936, actually, while on the subject, there's this wonderful photo, you can Google search it, for Nottingham 1936. You've got a load of world champions in this photo. I mean, if you put into Google Nottingham chess 1936 and look at the images section, there's a one. It's one of my favorites photos in chess. Actually, it's one of my favorite photos. It's got a lot of world champions in it. In fact, I mentioned this also, this photo, in one of my videos, funny enough, that I've done before. I wonder if I can get a good link for you if you want to just check out this photo. That's not what I'm talking about. No. It's this image address from the British Chess Magazine site. Is a long one to put in. Well, anyway, you can Google it. They're all outside. There's a lot of world champions in it. It's pretty cool. It's featured on this page if you scroll down after the cross table. If you want to check out the photo, it's featured on this page at John Saunders' site. If you underneath the cross table for Nottingham 1936, you have Tartagar, Vidma, Boglodjbov. There's a lot of world champions anyway. So cool. Let's moving on. So C4 bot from Botvinnik, and Vidmar played E6. We have knight F3, D5, D4, knight F6, knight C3, bishop E7. It looks fairly standard, bog standard so far, doesn't it? Bishop G5, black castled. It looks very bog standard, this position. And in fact, in live book, I expect there are 3,000 plus games from this position, with the main move being knight Bd7. It looks like a queen's gambit declined. Pretty standard. But actually, funny enough, you might be aware that usually rook c1 is the main move in live book. And that's funny, because even Alekhine in his notes, even in 1936, was really annoyed with the amount of theory it seems from his notes with rook c1, because he says, this is Alekhine's notes, I kid you not, from 1936. He says the variations starting with rook c1 have been so much analysed of recent years that the text move that allows the immediate c5 offers the better fighting chances. The text move looks ridiculous if you're aware of rook c1, because you might think, oh no, I'm losing a tempo here, and it's not theoretical. Yeah, even Alekhine was talking about this position in 1936. So rook c1's the main move, right? The problem with it is not so much, I don't think it matters about this tempo gain. I think something has been made of this sometimes. I'm not sure it matters about d takes c4 actually that much. It's still about equal. I mean, rook c1 is tempting black to give, you know, white this move free of charge. Yeah, that is a slight improvement, but black doesn't play, you know, doesn't have to play d takes c, as Alekhine noted. In fact, black could play maybe something else anyway. Maybe c5 is playable. c5. Anyway, he said it was analysed a lot, and he's probably right. It's not a big deal for white here. So anyway, we have this bishop d3. Yeah. Okay. So c5 was played here, and white castled. C takes d4, and Alekhine's note says, as the black pieces are not developed so as to attack the isolated d pawn, the better policy here is the usual line. He gives the usual line as d takes, bishop takes, a6, and to play like rook e8. He reckons that's the usual kind of policy there. So anyway, black in the game played c takes. We have e takes, and we do have this isolated queen's pawn position. And yeah, the funny thing about isolated queen's pawn positions is that they can arise from loads of different openings, and I think it's like a major chess skill in its own right, playing either with the isolated queen's pawn or against it, as Nimzovich also highlighted, to get a thorough understanding of the opportunities that this isolated queen pawn provides. And you might wonder, well, why is it given so much importance? Well, as I mentioned, it's just so many openings can get this isolated queen pawn position. Generally speaking, right, let's play the first move here that was played. It provides outpost squares on c5 and e5, and often the rooks are quite active, and often also the bishops are quite active. Now the downsides is the blockade point, and often, you know, black is just winning endgames with a blockade, and often these squares are kind of weak, and often if you get rid of this bishop, these squares are even weaker. The blockade opportunities can lead white to paralysis in some games. So there's opportunities for both sides, and it's often the player that exploits the particularly unique finesses of their version of the isolated queen pawn position that's going to get an edge. So let's say in this game we have bishop d7 being played, which Alekhine considers as a risky plan in view of white's prospects of a kingside attack. Yeah, the other major benefit is not just about these squares and the files, by the way. It's basically that you can try and get a kingside attack. Yeah, that's the major benefit quite often, because structurally it's like you've sacrificed a bit of your pawn structure for a bit of fun, basically. So you've got to get that bit of fun, and usually directed at the opponent's king somehow, because sometimes you can have a battery like this. You can have a classic battery like this and try and create weaknesses there, etc. So anyway, it's Alekhine said the half pinning of his king's knight, he calls it half pinning of his king knight. That's funny. So I haven't realised before he's called it a half pinning. Alekhine calls this a half pinning of the knight. It seems harmless at the moment, but will in a few moves become extremely disagreeable for black. It was wiser therefore to clear the situation at once, according to Alekhine, by playing knight fd5, and maybe he's got a point, you know. It does clear the half pin. I don't know if we really when we're playing we think, oh, there's a dangerous half pin here we have to clear, but maybe that's a good tip. Clear your half pins. I hope you're all doing that. You're all clearing your half pins? Yeah? That's Alekhine. Yeah? Some insight from Alekhine. Clear your half pins. So anyway, bishop d7, the half pin was not cleared. It's a violation apparently of some sort. Risky. So queen d3, this is a classic battery, yeah? Being set up against that h7. And if knight, already it's a bit late. Already it's a bit late to clear the half pin. The opportunity's gone. Because here, or has it? Or has it? That's interesting. No, I think the opportunity's still here for knight fd5. I think Alekhine was saying as if it wasn't. Yeah, this b knight was chosen, but we can still do this because bishop c2, g6. I don't think this is fatal for black. There's nothing about the finesses here which make it fatal for black, I think. Sometimes, you know, one of Raymond Keene's immortals, if like the bishop's not on e6 and this rook's not there, sometimes, you know, there's a rook sack or something, a knight sack, and it's horrible. But here there's no carnage, I think, in this particular position. But I think what black played now was a slight mistake, it seems. Knight, he used this knight instead of that. And we have knight e5 being played, which is novel, actually. This is quite a novel way of playing it. The thing is with bishop c2, in this, if we look at the nuances here, bishop c2, there's knight b4 straight off the bat, bang, knight b4. And if we go for this classic, it seems stereotypical plan by playing a3, I think black's going to be fine actually. I don't think any of this is really working here. This plan is not really working here, because what can happen is you get this backward c pawn. Black can transition the isolated queen pawn into a backward c pawn, and this could get really horrible and gruesome. This position just gruesome, just positionally dead lost with no dynamic play. Sorry, and you might think, well, it's not an isolated queen's pawn, but what it is a losing backward pawn instead. You've actually just transitioned this position into a losing backward pawn instead. These hanging pawns here are not brilliant. This is like this is fine for black. So that plan, yeah, is not entirely great. If you have to waste time with a3 here, it's not great. So this is quite interesting, because really Botvinnik, he's not playing the stereotypical plan. What he has recognized, actually, in one word, is defaults. I've seen this game before. What Botvinnik is appreciating is defaults. Do you know what I mean? The bishop, by default, is already doing a good job. Agree or disagree? The bishop is already by default doing a good job. It's putting pressure on d5. Agree? 1 agree, 10 disagree. Defaults. And the rook by default is on f1. Yeah? By default, this rook actually could be useful on the f file. I think he takes 2 of the defaults of the position, tries to make use of those instead. Because time is pretty critical here. Time is critical. One of the perks I mentioned was outpost squares. Yeah, c5 or e5. The e5 is a good outpost square. He leaves the bishop there. He doesn't want to set up this battery. This is the big danger to understand. Even in blitz games, you can often lose an isolated queen's pawn position just by playing the stereotypical plan and maybe not assessing your defaults. Yeah, he doesn't. By making use of the bishop there, he's not wasting time. He's not. This can quickly transition to another bad pawn structure, the isolated queen's pawn. He plays knight e5. What this means is the knight is quite aggressive anyway. There's some pressure, right? We've kept the pressure by default, and we've also opened up this default. If we'd bothered moving the rook, this is another plan which is often a disaster. If we want to play it like this to lift the rook, it's going to take ages and ages and ages. Yeah? And there's no guarantee we've got a successful rook lift with rook e1. Black could play bishop c6, and we get absolutely nothing. We can get absolutely nothing potentially from this position. This is the danger. Black's just going to set up a nice blockade. Forget it. Yeah, you might as well have not played that day. Yeah. So it's crucial to recognise what we can use in the position by default, and I think this demonstrates that. Knight e5. He's going to use this rook by default. No messing around. No rook on the third swinging over. No waste of time. Optimal. And in fact, this is the top engine choice. It's verified. It's the top engine choice. Knight e5. Yeah, when pieces are, I could translate the defaults. When pieces are doing good jobs, as Capablanca says there in the chat, leave them to do their good jobs. You don't have to waste tons of time. Time is critical, absolutely critical, because yeah, the isolated queen's pawn can transition into backward pawn, hanging pawns, fixed. Your bishop goes. That's it. Might as well resign. So okay, so bishop c6. Here, though, this is another super precise move. Even though I've talked about defaults, there's a super precise move played in this position. I'm not sure we can play f4 immediately. Yeah, I'm not sure we can play f4 immediately. If we play f4, knight b4, and our D pawn is weak. See the finesses? We can't, for example, say we wanted to put pressure over here. It's queen takes D4 check time, and the position is like not looking that rosy. Although there might be something in this. Let's have a quick look. I think it's only a small advantage for white, whatever it is. Apparently it's equal, but yeah, we don't want to indulge black with this queen takes D4 check in principle, right? So yeah, an accurate move here. Forget F4 for the moment. Is played. It seems rook AD1, so it does take time to defend that, which means there is the possibility of queen H3 and bishop C2, and then with pressure, you know, we can think about these things as well, basically, without losing the D pawn. If we're going to use the F pawn, we're trying to make use of this default rook. It does come at a cost. People say not to use the F pawn because you are weakening the diagonal. It can be fatal quite often to use your F pawn. But queen H3 is now supported. Anyway, more comfortably. We have black playing knight b4 here, which Alekhine considers a second mistake, after which white's attack becomes tremendously strong. He reckons a lesser evil was rook c8 in order to answer queen h3 with knight takes c3, b takes, and to stop the bishop doing evil things with bishop c2. I think he had in mind here this one. But even here it's dangerous actually. This is where he ends his analysis. Actually it's quite dangerous, this position. This position here is dangerous. So we're threatening that, and if bishop here, queen f3, this is still quite dangerous because actually we've got d5 down. That's a bit of a target there. It's still a little bit tricky, this position. This is quite nice for white because the bishop's a little bit of a target potentially, and there's also, yeah, that's still quite nice for white actually. So anyway, he calls this a second mistake, right? And he's got a point because now queen h3 is actually really good. Queen h3. So there's an opportunity once this knight's kicked to put the bishop here, and that's just nasty, that position. Really nasty. Just to give you an idea of how nasty that is, if we have this position, so we're threatening knight takes and then bishop takes and then queen takes, and if h6, I think we could just play bishop takes, and this is a slaughter. This position is just a slaughter because there's also a rook lift coming up. Black's position is gone, and it doesn't matter about anything now. Black can't defend this position. In fact, this move is given for some reason with the idea of this. So just to prepare rook e1. So rook e1 will be the threat, and if takes, then the rook lifts is crushing. So in preparation rook e1, that's crushing. Black is doing absolutely nothing here. For example, here we just take and then lift the rook, or in fact play the check first and then lift the rook for the termination of black's king. Knight h7, queen h5 with the threat of rook h3. It's just gone. It's just gone. Okay, that was winning material. So basically, yeah, queen h3. So with the idea of a3 and bishop c2 is crushing, absolutely. So black tries bishop d5. Alekhine says this does not solve the problem of the defense, as white preserves his powerful king's bishop, which is the light square bishop. White preserves it because knight takes d5 is played, knight takes, and it's here this default rook is now given this magnificent opportunity with f4. So white has actually got this bishop blasting through this diagonal, And it's actually here, instead of being weak of any sort, it's not weak in any kind of way. It's just helping white as part of this light square campaign to destroy this whole diagonal, to rip it to shreds with f5. f5 is such a logical undermining move, especially when you have that advantageous bishop with no counterpart. So f4 with the threat of f5 is mighty strong here. I don't think black can do too much in this position. Alekhine's notes, he gives g6, you might think f5 can be stopped. Actually here we have bishop h6, rook e8, and g4, etc. Alekhine gives, etc. And he's right, g4 is one of the strongest ways with f5, and we're just going to blast through this pawn chain. Not only that, once we play g5, the queen's also hitting e6. This is a very unpleasant position for black. So g6 looks as though you should play it, but it's not helping the cause that much. So rook c8 was played. Now guess what white plays here anyway. It's kind of in your face obvious, so I'm not going to ask it. White does play f5, funny enough, putting pressure on the diagonal. You can see it's all worked out beautifully here. This whole isolated queen's pawn position in this particular game example has worked like a charm. It's worked in an ideal way, absolutely ideal. And it goes back to what I mentioned. If you can take the finesses of the particular position you're in, you can prove advantage. And taking those finesses is not often playing the most stereotypical plans. Sometimes it's leaving pieces as far as possible in their original squares. Like this rook wasn't moved, the bishop wasn't moved. So you see that vividly shown. This unique plan is quite crushing here. E takes, rook takes f5. And white is now threatening quite nasty things involving that bishop, actually. Quite nasty things indeed. Black played queen d6, losing immediately, apparently. Yeah, it kind of loses immediately. But if we look at some of the dangers here, say we just play a6. One remarkable danger is apparently even bishop h6. Yeah, if this is taken, queen takes, and we've got a threat of check and then mate. And if here rook g5 and there's knight f7 mate, if here knight f7 mate, so even bishop h6, it's actually threatening. If black does nothing, we play bishop takes g7 and check, and we still get that scenario where this configuration is absolutely winning. Yeah, if knight h5 to defend that, then we threaten mate there, and then we go back to threaten mate there, and it's just delaying the inevitable. So that's it. So yeah, so bishop h6 is one of the tactical ideas if that has to be parried. I just gave you a6 as an example, but also simple, I think, and strong is just this, with the idea of, well, there's all sorts of ideas. But yeah, this is a really good idea though, bishop h6 tactically. But in the game we get actually queen d6. So this is described as losing immediately, and it does actually lose immediately. White has a very, very powerful move. In fact, Botvinnik played apparently one of the very strongest, yeah, he did play one of the very strongest moves in the position, using the finesses of the position actually quite well, because there's actually a kind of weakness to the last move here as well that that's kind of made use of. So can you guess what white played here? White's play here. What does white play in this position? I'll give you like 200 points for, there's one or two moves which deserve 200 points. It's actually kind of a winning position in any case. What would you play here with white? 200 points. Can you see Botvinnik's move? That'd be cool. Maybe 250 points for Botvinnik's move. 200 points for the next most clinical move. You know, Bishop H6 doesn't work here, by the way. There is one perk of this Queen D6. I'm not sure Bishop H6 works in this position. Let's just rule that out, because before it was quite remarkable. That might take care. See, this is not working well, I think, because of knight e4. And if, yeah, it's not working as well there. No, what is working really well here is making use of this weakness from the last move. In some lines, it's knight takes f7. Yeah, because this rook is potentially hanging. Black cannot avoid serious material loss. Simple and neat, according to Alekhine. Yeah, it's this rook on c8. How pedantic is that? How taking account of the finesses is that? Amazing. And you might think, oh, hang on. What if the king took? The king didn't take. If the king took, then bishop takes. This knight's pinned on d5. That's painful. We can just take off the knight, totally winning. So let's rule out king takes. So rook takes was played, which leaves this rook totally neglected by the last two moves there. Last few moves. Bishop takes is simple and strong. Okay. Now here, black played bishop takes. If he plays knight takes, we just play bang. We're hitting that rook. We're hitting the queen. We're hitting that rook. That's just winning material. It's just winning material. So if rook takes, we just play bang. Rook takes d5. We've got no back row issue to worry about or anything. And it's going to be like this horrible double discovered checkmate, in fact, if the black queen moves. Just to put that on the board. That's like checkmate. Even worse. So yeah, it's not too many choices for black. He played bishop takes. And now, yeah, this finesse, you know, this little finesse here. Rook takes d5. Winning material. Hitting that. Black did protect his rook. And you might think, hold on a sec. I've just gone about this rook being loose. And it's just protected. And in fact, you might think, well, black's only a pawn down. Actually, there's a point here, though. That there is a tactical point. It still involves the rook on c8. And sometimes opposite colour bishops favour the attacking player. They do here in this particular position. So white play here. There's a crushing move in this position. It is involving the rook on c8. That's a clue given to you. I'm giving you a clue. So white play here, quite a crushing blow now in this position. Actually, there's two moves that are totally crushing. 200 points for either of them. I'll give you minus 10,000 points if you manage to lose this position in any way, yeah? You'll have minus 10,000 points if you manage to play a move that loses because you failed to take account of forcing moves from the opponent, yeah? So when you suggest a move, this is just if you play chess online or over the board, you need to be very, very strict about not allowing unexpected forcing moves from the opponent. Hence my point scoring system. It's minus 10,000 if you manage to screw up this position by allowing horrible forcing moves. Okay, so you might want to retract some of your move suggestions there. Maximilian Wolf. Do you want to try a different move? I think your move, I haven't checked with an engine, I think it loses outright, totally, to a forcing sequence. Alright, okay, let's examine rook c5. This is one of the suggestions. I have a funny bad feeling about this. I have an intuitively bad feeling about this move. Okay, it might not lose. Actually, it might not lose. I don't know. It's not in the top 3, but whether it loses or not is actually, I'm not entirely sure. Let's have a quick look. No, actually, it doesn't lose. It doesn't lose totally. You lose all your advantage, though. You definitely lose all your advantage, because guess what black has here? Black to play. If you would play this, guess what forcing move you should have considered in this position? Black to play. Yeah, bishop takes d4 check is a pain. It undermines that rook, and we can just take here, and apparently it's just equal. Apparently it's not totally lost, though. You didn't lose it, so no minus 10,000 here, but it's just equal apparently, this position. Yeah. No, the way to do it is you want to impose your forcing moves on the opponent greedily without letting the opponent have any forcing moves, and you can do that in 2 ways, which both are completely crushing. The first way is rook d6. Yeah, trying to deflect the queen away so we can make use of this pinned piece. So if queen takes d6, we have queen takes c8 check, and what we can do is just have fun with that pinned piece, and then when we do take it off with the exchange up as well, and that is kind of winning. Yeah, I think we can just, that's kind of winning. The other way, by the way, before we go into the game, because that is the game continuation, rook d6. The other way is rook d7, making use of the pin piece here. If at least winning the exchange. Are we not? Can we not? Actually, it doesn't really like. Maybe this is okay. We're at least the exchange up. Yeah, that should be okay. That's good enough to win. But yeah, rook d6 was played, and the point is to gain a big tempo on the rook d7. Like, it's not an upgrade to rook d7. This is an upgrade. Or is it? Actually, it's about the same actually. So rook d6. If queen c7 though, bishop takes f7. Yeah, and that rook's going to be hanging. Or we win the queen with rook d7 check. We're winning the queen there. So that's unpleasant. Okay. So in the game, actually queen e8 was played. And torturing the pin now with rook d7 was played, which is really crushing. Instead of just taking on f7, this pin's absolutely murderous now. Yeah, if we just routinely take on f7, I think black might have almost a possibility, but no, even this loses horribly apparently. Well, black is the exchange down. d5 should be good. It should be good for white anyway, but no, even stronger is rook d7. Yeah, this is the most incisive move, rook d7, and here black resigned. So for me, looking at this game for the nth time, it's an example, a very important classic example of how in isolated queen's pawn positions you might have to come up with some sort of unique plan which might optimize, might make use of your piece defaults in some way, So if they are already good in some way in your particular configuration, maybe recognize that. There are a number of stereotypical plans hanging over these isolated queen pawn positions, which you might be tempted just to reuse, but you get one thing wrong and black can very quickly damage your position and give you no attack. So that's probably why this game is kind of iconic example of a sort of near perfect handling of the finesses that occurred around the isolated queen pawn situation. So I hope you got a lot out of both games, and have a good week. If you like the session, remember to like the video. Yeah, so likes welcome. Yeah, if you want to like session, yeah, I thought it was good fun. Okay, I'm going now. Yeah, 2 games is good if we go in detail, I think. So they were quite meaty games, none of this like win in 10 moves business, whatever. So quite meaty example games here. Hope you got something out of it. Thanks so much. See you next week. Cheers then.